trust him more than other religious leaders? It's a good question, isn't it? I don't know what you thought about Jesus before you came to the UK. Maybe you're thinking, oh, the UK is a Christian country, everyone knows Jesus, everyone talks about him, everything's all about him. Maybe since you've been here, you're a bit like, that doesn't seem to be the case. So there's university holidays, and maybe around Christian festivals, Christmas break, Easter break, but not necessarily much else. You don't see everyone going to church on a Sunday, you don't see lots of other things you might expect. So maybe you haven't actually encountered Jesus as much as you thought you might as you're studying here. There's a story that you may have heard before, but imagine 4 people walk into a room and they're completely blindfolded. Yeah? They walk in and they're told to describe whatever it is that they can see. Or not see, but whatever they think's in the room. They're blindfolded, they can't see. The first person walks in and goes, oh, this is really easy. This here, this is a snake. We're touching a snake. The second one walks in and goes, I don't know why you think this is a snake. This is 100% definitely a tree. The third one's like, no, you two are totally wrong. This is a rope. And the fourth one's like, seriously guys, it's a wall. All of them are touching the same thing and coming to completely different conclusions about what it is that's in the room. How can that be the case? Well, if they took their blindfolds off, they would see that actually what they thought was a snake was an elephant's trunk. What they thought were the trees were the elephant's legs. What they thought was a rope was actually the elephant's tail. And the one who thought they were touching a wall would find it was actually the side of an elephant. Sometimes people say that this is what religion is like, what God is like. They're all a bit the same. Every world religion, every religious leader is actually kind of the same. They just express themselves differently. So, this person says this about God, well, this religion says this about God. They're just, one's touching the trunk and the other one's touching the tail. Well, that kind of leaves us with a little bit of, well, does it really matter what we believe then? If all things are ultimately the same, does it matter? Well, I think it does matter. People follow religions all over the world. People follow different religious leaders, and they all say really, really different things, don't they? I'm not an expert in all world religions, and I'll happily admit that. I find people and cultures and religions fascinating. I love to think and to talk about them, but I'm not an expert in every religion there ever was. But tonight, the question is about, why should we trust Jesus? Why trust Jesus over all the others? So that's where we spend most of our time. But in the Q&A, please do feel free to ask questions about other religions. I may not be able to answer them, but hopefully we'll be able to think about why Jesus is the one who is, I will argue, superior to others. But don't get too offended too soon. We'll get there in a bit. First to say is that in all religions and all worldviews, there are some good and helpful things, aren't there? It's not the case that there's everything is 100% wrong. I think there is so much to learn in different cultural traditions, so much to learn in different religious practices. And so we can look at things around the world and be like, well, these are actually really helpful. Why is it that we have to say one is true and the others aren't? Well, when it comes to Jesus, there is one really, really big difference. He claims to be God. He's really clear about that. He's fully God, fully human. But he's a God who dies. Now, other religious leaders, when they die, well, they stay dead, don't they? But Jesus didn't. He's God and he's died. If he's truly God, if he's God himself, not just God's messenger, as most of the religious leaders claim to be, how can he die? How can God die? Why would God die? And how is death good news? I don't know what your experience of death is, but when it comes to friends and family who have died, that's never been good news. It's never been a positive, good experience. It's been sad and full of grief. But yet when we talk about Jesus, the Christians around you will talk about Jesus' death as good news. That feels weird, doesn't it? Well, let's rewind a little bit. These books that you have on your table are copies of Mark's Gospel. So it's a guy called Mark who has done research about Jesus, and he's talked to people who met Jesus, and he's written an account of his life. Now, we're going to have a look at a few things in here tonight, but let's start by looking at page 56. So if you open it to page 56, and we're going to look just at the sentence at the very top of the page, which makes it easy to see. So page 56, the very top, it says this: "For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve." Okay, we're talking about religious leaders. That's pretty major, isn't it? Just that first bit of the sentence. Did not come to be served, but to serve. When we think about religion, we think about doing things for God to make ourselves more acceptable to God. But that's not the case with him. He's saying he's come as God himself to serve. And how is he going to serve? Well, the second half of that sentence says, to give his life as a ransom for many. Jesus is so clear that he has come. He is God, and he's come and will die. This isn't a surprise to us, or it shouldn't be a surprise to us as we read through the account of Jesus' life, that he said he's coming to die. And yet, he's done nothing that deserves death. But he clearly predicts his death. He tells us that he will die. And that he will die in order to give his life, which is a way of saying he's dying, he's exchanging his life as a ransom for many. Most of, if not actually all of my experience of ransom comes from big Hollywood films where someone's been kidnapped. I don't know if you've seen films like that. They say you can have this person back if you give us a ridiculous amount of, normally millions of dollars, because they tend to be American, the ones I've watched. Think about that. If Jesus is giving his life as a ransom for many, he's actually buying back, he's paying for people. For many people, he's come to die, and he's paying the price. That's a massive idea, isn't it? That is completely different to how other religious leaders, and actually even how the world thinks about success and what life is about and how we're to live. So this is actually good news. This is how death can be good news for us, because Jesus has come to buy back those who are far from God. He's come to cover our shame. Isn't that incredible? I wonder if you're a little bit like, well, but why do they even need to do that? Well, have you ever been in debt? If you know what it's like to be in debt, then that horrible feeling inside when you just realise that you cannot afford to pay back the money that you owe somebody. I remember as a student, I got a phone contract for the first time. Before that, it had all been pay-as-you-go phones, and I loved it. I was so excited. If you looked at it now, it's fair to say that you would think it was retro or vintage, but at the time, it was really cool. But I used that phone forgetting that I only got so many free minutes and so many free messages, and I racked up a massive bill. that I couldn't afford to pay back as a student. It didn't matter really how many more hours I did in my part-time job. I could not pay it back. And that felt horrific. That felt like, oh, what am I going to do? And I just remember finally telling my mum, who I think fairly told me how stupid I'd been a few times, but then gave me the money to pay that off. I remember phoning the phone company and saying, I can pay it, here's all the money that I owe you. And the relief was massive. Now, we're not in financial debt to God, but actually we do have a debt to God. He's the one who created us, who loved us, who gave us everything in this world around us. And yet all of us have said, no, over there. We don't really want you to tell us what to do. Maybe, you might not be like me, but I very much think that 99% of the time, if not 100, I know what is right to do in every situation. Is anyone else similar to that? No? Maybe you're all a bit more self-aware than me? So I don't like anybody really telling me what to do. And that includes God. I'm like, no. You might have created the world, but I really know how to live my life. I can get on and do it. That's basically what the Bible refers to as sin. The fact that all of us have said, no God, over there. I know what to do. I know how I'm doing. And we can, no matter what we do, even if we lived a perfect life, which I think all of us, if we're honest, are aware that we don't live perfect lives. All of us have hurt people, maybe on purpose, maybe accidentally. Maybe we've lied, maybe we've gossiped, maybe we've done a million things. Maybe we've just thought in our hearts, I just don't want God in my life. We can't pay this back ourselves. We need someone who is sinless, who has lived a perfect life, who has said that he is God, who has proved that he is God. And the one who can die for us all because he is God. If he wasn't God, he'd just be living a perfect life for himself, the life that all of us should have lived. All Jesus would be somebody saying, look, I'm a good person, live like me. And I don't know how that would make you feel, but I think that would make me feel pretty rubbish, because I know I can't live a perfect life. Instead, Jesus says, here, I've lived this perfect life. Now, I have done it for you. And because I am God, I have lived and died so that you can know God, you can be restored, you can have the relationship with God you're created for. I mean, maybe you're just thinking, what on earth has this got to do with me? Well, Jesus here is making massive claims, isn't he? He is claiming that he's God. He's claiming that he has come to die in order that we can know him. And he's claiming that it's for all people. Now, C.S. Lewis, some of you might have heard the Narnia books, read The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe and others. He wrote lots of other books about theology and other Christian things, really worth a read. But one thing he's quoted as saying is that when we hear these things about God, we basically have three choices. We can say he is mad, like he doesn't know what he's talking about. He lives in his own little world. I don't know if you've heard that English phrase before, but somebody who just seems disconnected to the world the rest of us are living in. He's in his own little world. Or we can say that he's bad, that he's deliberately lying for some cause, that he's just making this up for fun. He's choosing to lie to us. Or we can say he's God. They're basically the three options we're left with when we hear Jesus' claims, which I think is why Jesus is different to every other religious leader. Because with other religious leaders, we're not expected to believe that they are God themselves. They're messengers. They're people who have come to tell us about God. Jesus is different. Jesus is God who has come to us. He hasn't sent a messenger. God himself has come. But how do we figure out whether or not he is mad, bad, or God? How do we work out whether he's totally detached from reality, whether he's just making up lies, or whether these claims are true? Well, turn on a few pages in this little booklet. We're going to have a look. Page 86. So we're skipping around in the story. But this is when Jesus dies. I'm just going to look at one verse. So about just over halfway down the page, you'll see a little number 37. And it just says this: with a loud cry, Jesus breathed his last. The Bible's really clear. Jesus died. 100% Jesus died. And then turn over the page to page 88. And look down to there's a little number 6, so the second to last paragraph. And some women have gone to look for Jesus. They want to make sure that his body has been prepared properly. Everything happened in a rush, so they want to make sure that his body has all the spices and that it should do. But the body's not there. He's met by an angel. And the angel says this: you're looking for Jesus the Nazarene, who was crucified. He has risen, he is not here. See the place where they laid him. This is the difference. Anybody can say, can't they, that I'm God. Just, what I say is true. There's no way I can disprove that other than I don't think you're true. But I can't really disprove it. But here we have Jesus, who claims to be the Son of God, who claims to be the one that has come for all of us, has come to give us all new life, who has come to pay the price for all of us ignoring God. And he says he's going to do that by dying. And then he dies. And maybe at that point you'd be like, oh, well, maybe he was telling the truth. But how can I really know that he was telling the truth? Because he's dead. But then he comes back. How amazing is it that there is somebody who knows us, who loves us, who was willing to come and pay the biggest price for all of us, the price of death, and in order to prove that he had paid that price, was able to rise from the dead. If Jesus had stayed dead, then I think I'd be with you going, well, we just can't know. He's dead. How do we know? Maybe he was just a guy who said some slightly wacky things. We can't know. Maybe I would be with you saying, actually, he probably was mad, just on another planet. Or he was just lying to make himself popular. But this changes everything. Because Jesus, unlike other religious leaders, hasn't just died. He's died and has risen. So why should we trust Jesus over other religious leaders? Well, Jesus has followed through on what he said he'd do, and he has done it and has proven it in a way that we cannot possibly understand. So there's lots of questions you may well ask, I'm sure, about how we can know the certainty of these things, and I'm really happy to talk that through. But the Bible is really clear. Jesus did die, as he said, but he beat death. Death was not have power over him. So, why should we trust Jesus? Well, Jesus chose you. Jesus did everything for us. Now, we're going to have a time just around tables to chat a bit more. Maybe you can talk about around your table what are the things that you most disagree with me on. That would be a great topic. And put some of them into the pigeonhole. We'd love to hear what you're thinking. We'd love to hear some of your questions. And in a few minutes, Mervyn will come up and ask me questions about your questions. So yeah, look forward to it. Enjoy the rest of dinner and look forward to hearing your questions.